What is DNAV? It's a model which helps you to understand the skills that you need to kind of overcome adversity, manage difficult people, manage difficult situations, and grow stronger from that. And what's awesome about these skills is that you already have them. And so DNAV is a kind of way of unlocking those skills that you have and showing you when to use them. So I thought I would demonstrate the model by having you go through an example in your own life. So what I'd like you to do is I want you to think about a conflict maybe you're having with somebody, not a major conflict, something minor. Pick something that maybe is a bit repetitive, an argument you regularly have that you would rather not have. Just something not too serious. And we're going to look at it through the lens of DNAV. So just take a moment to think about a conflict, and then we're going to discover the model. All right, so you can think of DNAV as the skills you need to manage this conflict, or indeed anything kind of in your life. And so what we're going to do is we're going to move the dial. So think of this V as a dial in the middle of the diagram. We're going to move it to A. And A is what we call your advisor skill. So you can think of your advisor, the way I like to think about it is it's like this little voice in your head that's always talking to you, judging, evaluating, trying to figure things out. So in this conflict, it may tell you, they have no right to yell at you. They're doing the wrong thing. You've got to be right. You've got to prove to them that you're right. So that might be your little voice. So it's just your little voice in your head trying to help you problem solve and figure things out. So let's get in your advisor space now. Thinking about your conflict, what do you think is causing the conflict? Just take a moment to use your thinking skills to come up with some causes. Now, what do you predict is going to happen after your next time you have this conflict? Use your advisor to try and predict. So if you've been thinking about, and maybe even worrying about this argument, that's called being in an advisor space. And sometimes that helps. Sometimes thinking and problem solving helps. But sometimes we can be in advisor space and it isn't helpful. So imagine that you're starting to worry and think about that argument all day long. You're thinking about this conflict you had, and you're getting angry and angry, and you're trying to problem solve. How can you stop this person from ever doing this? But the more you think about it, the more worried you get, the more upset you get, and it seems to be going nowhere. The good news is that thinking part of ourselves is not the only part of ourselves. So I'm going to call that the clever part of ourselves, the advisor, that part where we're problem solving and thinking and figuring things out. And sometimes it can lead to overthinking and worry, and it doesn't necessarily have all the answers, that advisor. So what can we do? Well, in this model, you can move to a different space. And so let's do that now. Let's move to what we call the N, or the noticer space. And to get into space, I'd like you to just place a hand on your chest and one on your stomach. And just take a few slow, deep breaths. And just get the bottom hand to move gently. When we're really stressed and not in noticer space, we'll notice the top moving a lot, like breathing too fast, and our chest is moving a lot. What we want is slowing down to get into noticer. And so noticer is this space where we can notice what's going on in our body. So I want you to think about this conflict again. Breathing nice and slow and deep. I just want you to notice any sensations in your body as you think about the conflict. When you're having this conflict with a person, what shows up in your body? For me, it's a bit of tension in my chest and stomach. For you, it might be in your face, or you might hold tension in your shoulders. Just notice where it is. And so, noticer involves slowing down and not reacting. And whereas the advisor is when you're being quite clever and thinking and problem solving, noticer is more of a wise space, where you're taking a step back and you're taking things in and you're not reacting. And you might notice things like, for example, if you're having an argument with somebody you care about, you might notice that they're really hurt and stressed. Like it might change how you see things. It's wisdom. So another way I like to think about this is like, imagine advisor is like your thinking self. It's constantly problem solving, thinking, giving you advice. It's kind of like a GPS in a car, right? It's telling you, go this way, go this way. But sometimes that GPS is giving you bad advice, right? You're trying to drive towards the city, but you can see the city in your background and you're driving the wrong way. Sometimes your advisor is saying things like, you're not good enough, you can't do this, don't let this person get one over on you. And you know it's not giving you good advice. So what do you do if you're driving in the wrong direction? If this GPS is misleading you? You can shift to a noticer, which in this metaphor would be like pulling along the side of the road and stopping and taking a look around. Because if the advisor isn't helping, if your thinking isn't helping you, then taking a mindful pause, slowing things down and not reacting, it's better to not react and be in that wise space than to keep reacting in the bad way or the ineffective way. Because so now you're on the side of the road and you're wiser and you know what's in your body and maybe you've noticed the person you're arguing with. Now what do you do next? We could go back into advisor space and try and be clever again and problem solve and reason. But there's something else we can go into. And that is what we call discover. So let's move the arrow to D, or discover, where your advisor is kind of like this problem-solving machine that's trying to keep you from making mistakes and predict everything. The discover is where you take action to find out what happens next. So the discover is like, so for example, in this conflict situation, I want you to think about what you typically do when the argument starts or the conflict starts. What's your typical behavior? So do you raise your voice? Do you get frustrated? Do you walk out of the room every time? We all do this, by the way. We all have some arguments with somebody we care about, and we do the same thing over and over and over again. I do it with my kids. I do it with my wife. It just happens. So just notice that's kind of what you're doing. The discoverer is a doer. What do you typically do? And then what the discoverer can do is something new. Like, well, I usually raise my voice and get angry and get in a rush when my kids are getting ready for school. And I do that every single time, right? What could I do differently? What if I just spoke calmly and I went upstairs instead of yelling from across the house and just kind of talked to them and saw what they were doing that day and encouraged them to get ready more quickly? So that would be a discover move. So the discover is like when it's at its best, when you're being your best discover, you're taking effective action. So these are three different spaces you can move between. The advisor is your thinking self, where you're thinking and problem solving. And when that's not working, you can move to noticer, and that's like your wise space, which isn't necessarily highly verbal, but it's like intuitive, and you kind of can take a look around. And then the discover is where you act, you take action, and you find out through trial and error. You're like willing to make mistakes. In all this, you can see we've been moving around the disc. At the center of this is V, or value. And this is the important thing that determines which skill you use. So value is what is personally important to you. So in this conflict that you're having, what kind of person do you want to be? Think about that. Like, I don't want to be a parent who's always stressed and angry in the morning and losing every single one of those beautiful mornings to frustration at getting the kids out the door. So that's my personal thing. I'm now revealing myself to you. I want to be the parent who's calm, who models calmness to my child, and who can kind of control my affect and doesn't lose my mind because the bus is coming in 5 minutes and my child isn't down eating breakfast yet. So the kind of person I want to be is a caring, loving parent. So that is at the center of this model. So I would use my thinking skills, advisor, noticing skills, noticer, and doing skills, discover, in the service of what I care about. And that's the whole model. So everything's driven by what you care about, what's important to you. Once we know that, we can know which skill we can shift between. And that shifting gives us this kind of flexibility, because sometimes just keep doing the same thing over and over again isn't going to work. We need to move to noticer and get a wise space. Or sometimes we need to think things through and problem solve. We need to move to advisor. But sometimes we've been thinking and we've been noticing for so long that we just need to take some action and do something new, and that's discover. So throughout this module, we're going to work through all of those skills and help you to become stronger at using those skills to get more of what you care about in life.